top grading and candling area, and we're looking at tops, and there's things that we can't see with the naked eye on the outside. So we're going to use a process that Dee's doing over here. Candling the top means that we're shining light through the top. Dee's been with us for about 13 years, and she's been doing the candling for a while. If she finds anything in this piece of wood that's not acceptable, she can use a pattern to manipulate where the top is going to lie. And if the pattern won't eliminate that area, we can also use the top for something else. We might use it over in the rosetting area to set up the machines, or we'll use it later on for center strips. So if this is a good top, she'll make some determinations as to what size it is, and also start to assign a shop order number that'll help with production. We're now at brace gluing. You can see the X brace is going on over the little glue wheel. She'll apply them to the top. Here comes the other half of the X brace. And then we'll work in the other pieces of bracing. Slowly get those on there. The dish that the top is in right now is heated up to about 110 degrees Fahrenheit, and that'll help the glue dry, along with the bladder of this material that you see on the top. When she pulls that lid over, it's going to come down over the bracing, and all the air is going to be removed, and that'll help the bracing just sit there and dry under the heat. So very flexible material. If the camera can catch that, you can see the bracing on this top, which is in the press right now. So once that's done, in about 6 to 7 minutes, the top will come up. They'll take the fully braced top out of there and put it on a rack to dry. So now we're in brace shaping, and this is standard shaping that happens for all models. A little bit later we'll be looking at custom shaping as well. Right now she's trimming off some of the excess pieces of the X brace. We want to keep everything in the dimension of the rim that we'll see later, so those pieces will fit together properly. Once she has a couple of those pieces trimmed off, then we'll get into the shaping with the chisel. This is very carefully but quickly done by hand. It's a very, very sharp chisel that each operator is responsible for. And she's going to whittle those pieces down to being thin, as thin or even thinner than paper. All while doing this very carefully to make sure that she doesn't touch the top and remove any wood from the top. The idea here is that we're getting the bracing as thin as possible towards the outer edge of the guitar, and that will help facilitate the entire vibration of the top. Now she'll start to plane some of the sides of the bracing. It's a nice detail that just rounds off the edges. And once she's complete with this process, she'll come back in with sandpaper and sand everything smoothly. We're here at the laser profiling machines. As you can see here, I have some side material, and if I turn this a little bit, you can see a dark edge on the inside. This entire piece has been cut out by laser, which is a very effective and efficient way to cut out wood. So the material will go into or onto a platen, go into the laser where it gets cut, and come back out. And this will happen very quickly. This excess wood will be used by someone. They might burn it, they might use it for inlay, and we even have landscapers and other people who use this material later on. We're now here at the side bending process, and Ray has been with us for 14 years, and he's doing a demonstration of bending. So this is over a hot iron that's heated up to about 420 degrees Fahrenheit. During hand bending, every side needs to go onto a form to make sure that he's getting the proper shape. He's also incorporated a little bit of water to help with the process. So the heat in the water creates steam that'll break down the cell structure and allow the wood to bend more easily. You can see some of these irons are in different shapes, so depending on the part of the body that's being shaped at the moment, you can switch irons. You'll also get a peek at the North Street factory where you'll see some of the old irons. These were just replaced about a year ago. very, very careful and slow process. It takes approximately or up to about 20 minutes per side to do. And the hand bending is effective because Ray can not only feel, but he can see and hear what's going on with the wood. So if anything were to start cracking, he can slow the process down and add some more water in as needed. We're here in the inlay department, and we're with Mary, who's been with the company for 9 years. She's been doing inlay for almost a year now, and we can see her slowly moving this material around the rosette. This is a guitar that's going to have a pearl ring, so the centerpiece that we see is simply an insert that will be removed later on. This one looks like it's working in there pretty well.
Yeah, so far so good.
This is also, while we're looking at this top, this is a tourified top. So it'll look a little bit darker than the rest of the tops. This area up here is going to be covered by the fingerboard, so there's no need for her to miter that area, but the material moves all the way around. It sits a little bit high from the top, and she'll wipe most of that glue off, but all the excess material and all the glue will be sanded off later in the finishing processes. Hi, we're here at Martin Guitar's Pearl Inlay department, and we're looking at an example of an abalone pearl shell here, and also an example of a D45 in some areas where pearl get inserted into. Previously, when this guitar was bound, they had inserted a filler strip that will make a channel for the pearl to be inserted into. So all of these little pieces of pearl coming from the shell, and a lot of what we're using today, as we talk about wood and some of the difficulty in procuring wood, we have similar concerns with pearl shell as well, especially the abalone. It's very rare, and to help alleviate that, we use something called ab-lam. So we're often laminating a piece of abalone onto mother of pearl and using less of the pearl shell. So let's take a step over here and see some of this pearl inlay in action. So we can see the channel has been removed. He has a little piece of string that's going in there, and then he'll start to color match and grain match each of the pearl pieces, make some cuts, and then insert some glue. We'll watch that happen right now. This is a great example to see the inlay done on. This is a D45. So this is a guitar that has pearl on the top, the back, the sides, the end piece, the rosette, the neck joint, and then also up on the neck and headstock as well. This is a considerable amount of work just to complete one guitar. Earlier we looked at the candling process, which reveals things in the wood that might not be acceptable for the top of a Martin guitar. This is an example of what happens to some of those tops. They can be placed in a laser that you see here, and we'll cut these pieces cross-grain and also emboss the Martin logo with Nazareth PA below it. And each of these pieces is going to get inlaid into the back of the guitar as a center strip. So each one will get turned into one of these pieces here. And this laser is also cutting out center strips, but I want to point out this block. The lasers are also used for embossing the logo and the serial number into the front blocks. If you come visit us for a tour, we'll give you one of these laser embossed sound hole cutouts at the end of the tour. The inside of your Martin guitar has a little tiny embossed logo on the bridge plate. And all of these are just little details to dress up the inside of the guitar in a nice way that is not easy for the average luthier to do. So these are all things that help protect our brand image. So we're here in the ribboning area. We're with Vanessa. Now Vanessa's only been with us for about a month, but she's doing a great job. and we anticipate her being here for a long time. She just applied a little bead of glue to the side of this lining, at the back of the lining, and she's going to start to manipulate this around the body. This ribbon lining is made out of cedar, which helps for lightness and flexibility. And of course we're using some of our most sophisticated technology here, the clothespin. We probably have 100,000 clothespins here in the factory, but they're all very good ones. It's very important that they have the right amount of spring in them. So she'll start to work that ribbon all the way around the side. Adhere it every inch or so with a clothespin. The reason we use these is they're light and flexible enough that they're not going to damage the wood. The cedar is very soft. This is Indian rosewood, but mahogany would be very soft as well. Almost towards the end there. She'll put a little bit of a stronger clamp on the end just to make sure that holds tightly. And she has a couple more steps to do to clean that up, make sure there wasn't too much glue squeezing out, and then she'll start to work on the entire top surface as well. Now we're here in the top and back assembly area. Mike is working on the top. He's routing out areas of the ribbon lining so that the bracing can fit right into those areas and lock the top tightly together with the body. So we'll watch him trim those out. Now he's going to switch the body over and do the back. And then we'll start the dry fitting process. Now he's going to start dry fitting the back. Super 4 parallel back braces. Those should drop right into those areas that have been cut out. If it's not fitting exactly the way he wants, he'll make some modifications. He's going to inspect it from the inside to take a look and also make some pencil marks where he needs to do some cutting. Bracing looks like it's fitting pretty well, and he's making marks right now on the center strip to be able to trim that off as needed. Looks pretty good. So we'll go through the same exact process for the top, ensuring that all of these braces fall into their appropriate areas. Then he's going to glue the top and back onto the rim assembly and set it in one of the presses that you see behind him to dry. So that press is heated up to about 110 degrees Fahrenheit, and the black bag that you see at the top is going to fill up with air, and that will compress the body together while it dries. So now we're here with Mercedes, who's been here for 10 years, and she's going to braze the back of the guitar. This is a process where we cut out a channel around the edge of the body, and this channel will be used to accept the binding. It's a very tricky process. You need to make sure she's holding the body on there perfectly straight, otherwise the binding will go in at an angle. And once she pulls it off of here, she'll do a little test just to ensure that the binding is done properly. So over here we have some samples of the binding that's going to go on this style of instrument. Run it around that channel and make sure she did everything smoothly, and then we'll pass it on to the binders. Now we're here in the binding department with Emily. Emily's been here for 21 years, and you can see she's working the binding around the phrase channel, starting to put on a little bit of glue. She'll work the binding onto the body and then tape it off with a special masking tape. There you go. She did about a 16-inch section, and then she'll start to tape that off and finish up the binding around the cutaway. Now, if the binding material or the binding itself is giving her any trouble in the cutaway area, or she's in the waist right now, but on the other side, she can wrap it up with additional material to help hold it on there.
You want a piece of that?
Sure. Emily's going to show us the wrap. So this material, this is the way we used to bind, the guitars. And when Emily first started, she was doing it this way. There's about 150 feet of this cloth wrap that she would wrap around the bodies in a very particular manner. But she'll still use this, again, as needed to help with that cutaway area, or possibly if she's installing wood binding. So as part of the finishing process, stain and different sunburst packages need to be applied. Randy's back here prepping a body to get stained, and if we look over to the right, we can see some cherry stain on some mahogany bodies, and also a couple of sunburst guitars over here as well. So all of the colors in the sunburst are hand sprayed back here in the room behind Randy. And then up here in this front section, we have a number of inspections and little touch-up areas going on. Come up here to Bill. Bill's working on the edge of a fingerboard. Found a little bit of something on there, maybe some stain got into the fingerboard material. He's just going to clean that up and get it right back to the right color before it goes back in and gets more spray on it. We're now in pre-finish sanding, and we're with John, who's been with us for about 13 years. He's sanding the body using different grits of sandpaper. He has it on a stanchion, which gives him the ability to move the body around in any direction. Once he gets that all sanded down, it'll be ready to go. The other piece he's going to do here is the sound hole needs to be beveled. So this area that had been cut out with a saw now needs to be rounded off. When he gets to that point, he'll take a piece of sandpaper in his hand, he'll cup it inside the body, and spin the body around on the stanchion with a motor, and that'll sand the sound hole into that dimension. We're now moving on in the pre-finishing process, and part of that process is to apply an oil-based filler. Kurt's back there applying some of that filler to a East Indian rosewood body right now. As you can see, it's a pretty dirty process and makes a little bit of a mess and gets all over the guitar. So now what we're going to do is we're going to come out here and clean off each individual piece of binding. We'll take a look over here at this model. So starting to scrape the fill material off of the guitar, off of the binding, and bring it back to its original color. This is all very carefully done by hand. We have a little blade and a sharpening stone, and she's just using her forefingers, thumb, and a whole lot of skill. Now we're fully into the spraying and finishing process. You see some sanding booths over here, bringing the finish down and making sure that it's nice and smooth before it goes on to the next process. If we look over here to my left, we have a number of guitars that have been through that sanding process. We can also see that there's a little bit of finish on there. So these guitars have been sprayed with nitrocellulose lacquer, and they're now being sanded down as part of that process. So what happens is we put a little bit of spray on there, and then we sand it down, and we put more spray on. It'll dry in between that process, and we're building up the finish over the pores of the wood. So as we look at these, not so much on these bodies, but when that finish is shiny, you can actually see the pores dipping through. We're going to build that finish up over the pores, sand it back down, and continually go through that process until we get a nice glossy finish on the outside. This entire process from pre-finish sanding through the complete finish stages will take about 21 days. It's a significant amount of time, and a lot of that is drying or sitting time, but it's really important to make sure that the nitrocellulose, which we firmly believe in as a finish for tone, is going to sit on there properly. As part of that process, we'll take a look over here to where the finish dries. Because we're in an environment out here that is about 72 degrees Fahrenheit and 45% humidity, it's not the best environment for the finish to dry in. So for a short period of time, the guitars will go into this chamber, which is heated up and also a little bit drier than the temperatures out here. So in here, it's closer to 100 degrees, and the humidity drops to about 27% or so. And that's a great environment for the finish to dry very evenly. We're now in the robotic buffing area. You can see a body that's been brought to the robot using the suction cups. It'll now bring it over to this buffing wheel. This was 21 years ago. This was a very, very difficult process that was very time consuming and also very hard on the hands and wrists. So to automate this process a little bit was a huge help in efficiency and productivity, and allowed us to actually hire more people. So once the guitars were coming through here more quickly, we were able to add more people in shipping and sales and all the operations that we'll see after this. So the robot is programmed for each body style and also the finish package. So if this guitar is only getting the top polished, it'll do that, bring it over to the next wheel, which is a finer polish, and then it'll put it back on the tray and pick up the next body. So I want to talk to you a little bit about the neck assembly and the truss rod. We can see here a breakdown of what a neck looked like with our older one-way adjustable truss rod. Now this truss rod used to extend pretty far out from the neck, and in fact if we look at this body down here, you would have been able to see the end of that truss rod right inside the #1 brace coming across the body. The new two-way truss rod terminates at the end of the neck. So let's translate that into what it looks like on the body. This rod is going to stop at about this point right here. So it's much farther back from the sound hole and much harder to see. And we still get calls from customers every day asking where the truss rod is. It's in there, it's just a little bit farther back and requires a longer wrench to access. The other piece I want to show you is the difference between a traditional fingerboard and fret slot and the new pocketed fret slot. So if we take a look at this piece over here, this was cut using a machine, but similar to the old style of cutting fingerboards where a fret saw would go right through the entire fingerboard, and what you'd see on the end is the entire tang of the fret. One way to alleviate that is to use binding, but binding can add a lot of expense to an instrument. So what we've started doing very recently is pocketing the fret slots. So we have a machine with a tiny little router bit that comes in and creates a fret slot that doesn't make it all the way to the edge of the fingerboard. So all you feel on the outside is wood, and you're not feeling the exposed fret wire on the outside. All right, so we're now in the pre-finish area for necks, and these are going through a very similar process to what we saw in the custom shop. This neck coming off the CNC machine is honed in a little bit closer, but Glenn still has to come in and do a lot of work to with the shape and the overall appearance of the neck. So right now he's honing in some of those points around the fingerboard neck transition, and he's been with us for about 4 years doing this, and hopefully many other things to come. We're now at the neck pre-fitting area, and also where we're going to trim the heel and add the heel cap. So what they're going to do in this area is all of the necks are a little bit oversized, and we want to make sure they're going to fit properly. So they'll get the neck into the body, and then they're going to be cutting off this area and adding the heel cap to make sure that it lines up with the binding. So this is the traditional dovetail joint. This is not something that was invented here at Martin, but the idea of using it on an acoustic guitar was relatively new and something that CF wanted to incorporate into building of his instruments. Guitars before this time were all built as one piece and had something called the Spanish block on the inside, where the sides were built into the neck. CF wanted the ability to work on the neck and the body separately, and that's where he incorporated a very familiar woodworking joint that he had learned from his father back in Germany. We're now in the final assembly area, and one of the first things that happens here is that the necks get cleaned off. This is an example of a neck that's been cleaned, all the tape has been removed, and he's now coming back in with stain just to even out some of the pores of the wood, and also a little bit of oil, and this will really highlight the fingerboard. So once we get to the point where this is all clean, then we'll install the tuning machines also in this area. Now the neck and body for the instruments that are simple dovetail are going to move over to this area. So traditional dovetail that we saw earlier is everything from the D18 and above. The simple dovetail is everything from the 15 series through the PA series. And you can see the simple dovetail here, the compound cuts. And I'll show you how it draws into the body. So this would be the neck portion, this would be the body portion, and these two pieces lock in together like that. When we come up here and take a look at this machine, we'll see how this is done. So this machine here, which is proprietary to Martin Guitar, is profiling the neck and then cutting the body to match. And what we end up with is a really tight fit. We take a look at one of these bodies here. Not only does it cut the neck joint to match the neck itself, but it cuts into the side and also cuts into the top. So the fingerboard and the neck are all going to drop into the body and fit very tightly. We're now in the customer repair area, and we're with Sue, who's been with us for 29 years. We're going to talk a little bit more about that in a moment, but she's working on a guitar that looks like it had the neck pulled and is getting is this a brand new bridge, Sue?
Yes.
It's getting a brand new bridge. So as part of the putting all those things back together, she needs to make sure that the neck is refit the way that it was originally, and maybe even better. And then she'll put a brand new bridge on there. We want to make sure that that's the correct height so that she can get the saddle and strings on there appropriately. So the really cool thing I wanted to mention about Sue is that, and this applies to the whole factory and family here at Martin Guitar, is that Chris Martin is our sixth generation, or the sixth generation of his family who has run the company. But there are a lot of other families that are working here, and some of those families have been here for a long time. Sometimes we have overlapping of generations, so multiple generations working at the same time. Sue's story is cool because it's very well documented, and if we look at this photo over here on the corner of her bench, we see Sue's grandfather in 1925, and at that time he was 21 years old. And if we look closely at the photograph, we can see the part of North Street that was added just before this picture was taken, probably about 6 years prior. So they're in the extension to the old factory over there. The other interesting thing about the photo is that we mainly see ukulele bodies in this photo. During that time, during the Great Depression in the US, it was more difficult for people to buy guitars, but the popularity of the ukulele had grown, and they were also a little bit more affordable. So we were building, at one point, about 14,000 ukuleles and only about 600 guitars.